Sometimes Facebook lets me down, sometimes YouTube lets me down, but I'm live on both now, so it's your boy M.K.S back in the video, and welcome to part 2 of my plans for dyslexics to work with FIFA and that kind of thing, and my dreams about football. But yeah, I just realised as well before I made sure I chucked my ping pong ball that I used to play with the cats and all that kind of thing. Well, the cat now, I've only got one at the moment, but I'll become the crazy cat. But anyway, I'm going to try and get to the point, sorry. But I thought because of the football related video, I could juggle that, throw that ball up and down for some reason. So a little habit I have. I think when I'm bored or when I'm stressed, I sometimes do that now and again. But anyway, yeah, welcome to part 2 of my plans for dyslexics together with others to work with FIFA and how FIFA can improve maybe. Dyslexic creativity could help FIFA to improve. And hopefully Italian football and Celtic as well within the rules of the game and within the laws and that kind of thing. So yeah, within the rules of the game, within the rules and laws of the game and international rules and laws. But yeah, these are pointers number 11 to 20 as per usual. And I had a shower to freshen up. I was really cold afterwards. This room is nice and fairly warm compared to the rest of my house. But anywho, still feeling a bit chilly as well. But if I do this, I feel a bit sort of, I don't know, I feel like strangulated, or I don't know what the word is, claustrophobic, I don't know, something like that. But anyway, here goes. So number 11, I'd love to know from football fans out there, what would you change about football? Maybe football itself, maybe, well, some people who don't like football might leave a cheeky comment about football, but what do you think football could, like maybe the governing bodies that run football, maybe in your own personal country, maybe like in England, the F.A, or Italian football fans like Serie A, the F.I.G.C and whatnot, even German fans might say the Bundesliga or whatever, but also about FIFA and U.E.F.A, like what would you change about some of the things they do? Like when they implement new changes, maybe they can consult the fans before they're making new changes or whatever. Where do you think maybe the people who run football get things wrong? How can they tackle things like corruption, which I've come to in a bit more detail, and things like that? And also, how could they change perception of dyslexia and related conditions through football, or even disability or whatever? And how can football be used to build a bridge more? So what would you change about football, and what do you think football could do to change itself and to change the world? Hopefully for the better, of course, that kind of thing. And again, like say, for instance, before they make changes, maybe consult the fans and things like that. And yeah, where do you think, let's say, FIFA or U.E.F.A or whoever gets it wrong? I know some people are not very happy with FIFA and that kind of thing, but I think one of the things they should do is consult the fans before they make changes and that kind of thing. But yeah, how can they change perceptions of dyslexia, related conditions, disabilities generally and whatnot? Again, what would you change about football, how it's run, football governing bodies or whatever, whether that's FIFA itself or football organisations themselves generally, or football organisations in your country, if you're watching from overseas or in England or wherever it might be. I know I'm an Italian football fan and Italian football and Celtic fan, excuse me, from England, but yeah, what would you change about your own personal F.A or whatever? Like for instance, Italian football, come to think of it, obviously at this point, but before I move on to point number 12, for instance, Italian football, I think there's lots of things they could change. I would have all the former players. Part of me was gonna, and I wanted to post this on their Facebook page and their YouTube channel, but I thought if I do that, they could block me or whatever if they don't like what I say. But I was thinking, get rid of all the people who are in football at the moment in Italy, the F.I.G.C, and replace them with former players, people like Del Piero, Roberto Baggio, Bobby Baggio, as some people call him, Cannavaro. I know Maldini has some involvement with AC Milan, but he could with the national team, Materazzi, and all those former players. I know Buffon's involved, that's someone who's involved. I'm trying to remember who it was, but what if they got all those former players? I know Roberto Baggio, apparently, I read, which is really disappointing, he made like a really big plan. I think it was like 26 pages long or something like that. Really long plan. I know it's not to read, but he really had lots of reforms. And instead of sitting with him and listening to him and saying, yeah, that's how we can improve it, the Italian FA was stuck in their ways and said, no, we're not going to change. And I think similar with Celtic, and obviously I'm focusing on Temple and Celtic as fans of those, but it'd be interesting for fans of different clubs and different national teams to say, like, this is what I would change. England fans might say, well, this is what I would change about the FA or whatever. So that would be interesting more generally in football, or more specifically for football teams, but try and listen to different fans. Again, I'm going to focus more on Italian football national team and Italian club teams and Celtic naturally because I'm a fan of those, but I'm prepared to listen to other people's views as well. But also with Celtic, like change the board now, I often ask Celtic supporters, Celtic fans, what do you want to see happen? Like, what would be your Christmas wish list for the club? Who would you have as a new manager, or would you give the new manager time? Do you think the new manager just needs to be less stubborn and that kind of thing? But I want to talk about that more tomorrow. But and things like that. But yeah, what if you would replace the board? Who would replace them with? Because he's saying replace the board, sack the board. Some people say they're not going to sack themselves, and I often mention like Celtic fans don't want wealthy owners, apparently, or some of them don't. But I wonder if it's the same people who say, oh, we want to compete in Europe. How would that work? What would be your 5 to 10 year plan for Italian football and, of course, Celtic, respectively, for instance? But I'm going to move on to number 12, talking about, I know I said what would you change about football, but what do you love about football? And maybe some people might have some positive things to say about FIFA and or UEFA. Unlikely, but you never know, I guess. But also about football generally, what do you love about football? What got you into football? What do you love about your own team, your favourite team or teams? I know some people might have one team they stick with, and some might have like a second favourite team or whatever as well. But yeah, what do you love about your local club? What do you love about football itself? And things like that. And going back to what I said about changing perceptions of dyslexia and related conditions or whatever, and how to empower people and involve people from different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds or whatever. How can football motivate people with dyslexia? Like people with dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and possibly dyspraxia, as I said before, could have a purpose by being involved in football. And even people with physical difficulties, disabilities, which can't play themselves or whatever, they could share ideas. So they might say, yeah, someone might be blind or unable to walk or whatever, have these disabling conditions, but how can we empower them to say you can still have a voice on ideas about football or whatever? And yeah, how can it be used to empower them? As I say, I know people with physical disabilities can still be included, like there's deaf football teams, blind football teams for amputees even. And I was involved in like a pan disability sort of league a while back when I was younger. But yeah, like people might get fat and old like me, but we still have ideas about football. But yeah, and involving people from different backgrounds, people with disabilities. How can more POC, people of colour, be involved? I could say Point Break. How can we tackle hate, and how can we get more diversity? Like people who run FIFA, how many are POC, how many are women, and how many from different backgrounds? I'm not really into the LGBTQ stuff, but maybe they could be involved, I guess. People from different backgrounds. I'd love to know, as ever, what do you think? And yeah, and that sort of thing. But trying to think if there's anything else I was going to say for point number 12. But yeah, how can we inspire and motivate and encourage people? And what does football already do well? So as well as talking about what it could change, what does it do well? But yeah, I'm going to move on to point. What inspire and motivate me is Italian teams and Celtic winning back at the moment. I'm going to move on to point number 13, which is like, yeah, at the moment, unfortunately, Italian teams and Celtic. It was almost like I had to laugh, otherwise I'd cry. But it feels like I like to be happy in life, but it feels like something I really struggle to be positive about at the moment. But I'm hoping there's changes. But yeah, from a selfish point of view, I'd love to see Italian teams do well. And also, I'm worried about Celtic at the moment. Like the rankers, as I call them, are just on our tail, and they start winning games and we're losing games. And I worry if our manager, who I'd really like to see do well because he's a Celtic man, because he's the manager of Celtic, but he seems to be a bit sort of stubborn in his ways, set in his ways, a bit like myself, to be fair, in some ways, a creature of habit and that kind of thing. But I really hope he can be a bit versatile, and then he can implement strategies a bit later. Some people say he should have waited a bit longer to implement his strategies, but I'd really like to see more black managers do well. But at the moment he's on thin ice. I think he's really got to change, and I think it'd be good to see him mix up. I might talk more about that tomorrow. But yeah, what would I said about some of the negative things about football, so I hope people share things they don't like about FIFA. I hope people won't be too rude. But I was going to say as well, I hope I don't jinx this by saying it. I might say in point number 14, so I don't want to jinx it. But yeah, what are some things you don't like about FIFA or UEFA or football itself, even generally, or modern football, the modern game, or whatever? Some people say there's too much money involved, or whatever it might be. But it'd be great to read from different views. I know I've got selfish dreams about the Italian teams doing well and that kind of thing, having loads of investment and funding and that kind of thing. And some of my fears about whether I'll be able to implement my ideas. I normally think of that for point number 13. There's a bit of a dilemma because I thought point number 11, sorry, I think about like changes and what could be changed. But then in point number 13, I think about some of the things that people might say are negative. But maybe it's something that FIFA could change. And moving on to number 14, on that note, like how can football be used to tackle problems, whether inside or outside of football? So how can football tackle corruption in the game, make sure the best team wins, not a team that bribes referees or anything like that? How can we kick out corruption? I like to use football analogies like kick out, boot out, tackle, and whatnot, thinking about sliding tackle and that kind of thing. But how can we tackle those things, tackle those illnesses or whatever in the game? So to make it truly a beautiful game, how can we tackle things that make fans annoyed about the modern game? Although for me, I love to see more money in football, and I find having loads of money and transfers and things like that interesting. And I think a solution for, like, people might say, like, what about all the poverty in the world? Is like footballers being encouraged to give like 10% of their wage to charity. I think they should be given a choice, so that's difficult to get the balance right. I don't think they should be shamed if they don't want to, because it should be their choice, but they could be encouraged to do that and to visit different countries, like Messi was in India, Lionel Messi was in India. But yes, visiting poorer backgrounds. I mean, people have to spend a lot of money on those tickets, so it doesn't always reach poorer people, but there can be funding that's done through football to help people from poorer backgrounds to have access to academies and places where they can play. So places and spaces for playing and practicing football. For me, from a selfish point of view, I love to see that for Italian football and Celtic, but also it could be done for developing nations, including Italian football and Celtic, fundraising for those sort of things. So it'd be great to see football tackling its own problems, but also tackling booting out and that kind of thing, other things, and looking at how and that kind of thing, how we can bring people together, be more fun, give you a purpose in life, something to work towards, something to enjoy, hopefully, look forward to, or ideally. Although obviously it's not always good when your team loses, but it is a competitive game. But at the end of the day, it's only a sport, I guess, and it's just for a bit of fun, I guess, in a way. Although I do take it seriously, and just like other people, in many ways. But especially when it comes to professional level, and sometimes even when I played football in the park, I sometimes forgot it's only a game. But or if you think it's only a game, you're in the wrong place, I guess they say. But yeah, how can football be used to fundraise, for instance, to tackle poverty, to tackle and challenge like global warming, climate change, illnesses, diseases, natural disasters, or at least the effect of such? Fundraise for like the Disasters Emergency Committee, and basically be used to tackle problems in the world, which is something dyslexic people can be really good at. And how can it diversify? As I say, I'd love for people to share solutions and suggestions for solving problems. Again, football could be used to fundraise to help people from poorer backgrounds have access to education, to support businesses in developing nations, to tackle those issues I talked about, and to basically just make the world a better place by tackling problems, fundraising and that kind of thing. Again, I'd mainly love to see Italian teams and Celtic do that, but obviously others could do that as well, like fundraise to, like Soccer Aid or things like that, fundraise to support people in developing nations. I'd love for Italian teams and Celtic to, which they kind of do, I'm sure. I know Celtic does, I'm sure Italian teams do. I know AC Milan has the Milan Foundation, as a fan of Italian football generally. I know I'm wearing the Inter Milan cap, but I say as a fan of Italian football generally, a mad fan of Italian football, I wonder how they could support more academies and supporters clubs. And moving on, 15, as I talked before about my goals for football, what I'd love to focus on is to see Italian teams and Celtic doing well, which requires investment, infrastructure, opportunities for people to play and practice and develop their game and learn. I hope to see, I don't know how much I should give away on this, but I'd love to see Italian football learn from like Spain, France, Germany, Argentina, and other countries to see what could be learned. Especially like La Liga, the Spanish league, like what could Italian football learn from them, and what could it learn from, like what could Serie A learn from the EPL about marketing and branding and that kind of thing, and what could it learn from France in terms of the national team, and Argentina and Brazil and teams like Germany and that kind of thing, to improve, and I suppose similar with Celtic in a way, same sort of thing. Number 16, I'd love to, as I say, I'd love to hear from different fans and look at different ways Italian football could improve, what could it do better, and Celtic, as I say, and that kind of thing. Number 17, it'll be hard to envisage, but I hope to share, by sharing these ideas at some point, more dyslexics will be involved. Dyslexics, graphics, dyscalculics, and maybe even dyspraxia, as I said before, and maybe even people with disabilities somehow be involved. I know, again, there's football that's involved for people with disabilities, but that wouldn't always be able to play football. So, like for accommodation, and then again, fundraising could be done for that, and giving people more access and opportunities to play football. But I hope that if Italy and Celtic, as I said before, like if we promote a beautiful game around the world, I hope FIFA will reward us with more funding, FIFA and U.E.F.A with more funding, because we're helping football generally, which would benefit them hopefully financially as well, which is fair enough. I don't mind them making a profit, but as long as hopefully they do it ethically, and tackle corruption and that kind of thing. But and I'll talk about how I'd love to see what dyslexics could contribute to Italian football and Celtic, and I hope to travel with different dyslexic groups, people with mental health problems and different backgrounds, Anglo-Indians and other Eurasians, for instance, and that kind of thing. Yeah, I'd love to see Italian teams and Celtic have billions or even trillions of funding. If I'm really dreaming, think about imaginations, which I normally think of for point number 17 with my strange patterns. But as I say, building more pitches and opportunities for Italians and Celts to practice and play football, and to invite dyslexics to go and play football in Italy and that kind of thing, and Celtic Park, and all those sort of things. So yeah, in my imagination, it'd be hard to imagine, but I talked about like networking ideas for dyslexic millionaires, billionaires, and even if there was a trillionaires network in the future, and I'd love for them to invest in and show what we could do to benefit Italian football and Celtic, as well as football itself generally, FIFA and UEFA. Not that I encourage any law breaking or corruption, as I say, just to clarify, but obviously, as I say, doing so legally, lawfully, within the rules of the game and within international laws. But yeah, I'd love to see Italy having so many football pitches, footballs in parks, schools, and things like that, and Celts, Celtic supporters, Celtic fans to be encouraged to play football and practice and learn as much as possible and practice together as well with each other and learn from each other. Yeah, I'll probably talk more about that tomorrow. Ideally, all being well. Number 18, as I say, how can football make the world a better place? Football for the greater good, and I'd love to see Italian football and Celtic, as I say, be involved in that. Obviously, other teams could also be involved, but obviously, I'm going to focus on ones I'm more interested in. But maybe EPL, La Liga, and other teams could be involved. M.K.S teams, for instance. I'm wearing the wrong cap for this, I guess. But think about AC Milan. I might switch to my AC Milan cap, but yeah, having academies and supporters clubs in. So I think mainly for some reason, I suppose it's because it's black and red, actually. Come to think of it, of AC Milan having academies and sports clubs for Native Americans as well as people from Africa and that kind of thing. But then that could encourage MLS teams and whatnot to form. I don't know if I should have done that. I just thought it'd be a bit quirky, so I changed my cap. I was going to just like do what I normally do, which is like show my cap like that. But I thought I'd change caps. I don't know why, but not that I'm changing teams. I always support all the Italian teams. I'm a bit mad like that. For risk of people knowing I'm mad, I probably should keep it more secret. But moving on, number 19, I'd love for football to be used to fundraise, as I said before in part 1, for like people in Africa to work together, and hopefully that can build a bridge for Africans to, as well as having like access to football academies, sports clubs, and things like that. Even AC Milan sports clubs and things like that, for instance, and their own sort of teams and whatnot. and basically opportunities to play football and practice their football as well. Again, I'm going to focus more on Italian football and Celtic because I'm more into those things, but into those teams. But to make video games like for FIFA and UEFA, or well, I don't know about UEFA, but maybe even UEFA, but certainly for FIFA and for their own regions. But also they could have a partnership with Italian football. You go along with like migration and diplomacy between Italy and Africa through football and that kind of thing. So Italians could fundraise for African businesses and Africans in tech, and Africans could help Italian football to practice more to get back to the top and things like that. It's unlikely African countries would win as many World Cups and all that kind of thing, whereas Italy could be potentially a top nation if we get our act right. Just remember that. I'm not to drink my tea, but yeah, making video games and things like that would be interesting. What video games they could make? Maybe they could make specific ones for like AC Milan and other Italian teams, as well as Celtic, Fiorentina, and other Italian teams. I'll say, yeah, and have a partnership and see where that can go. And number 20. I hope Italian teams and Celtic have a mix between older and younger players. And again, football could be used to fundraise for providing access to STEM education in developing nations and that kind of thing. And peace and love. I'm out.